From the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina, this is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, presented by A Cloud Guru, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from the massive studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have both of us again. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good. 4 in a row. It's May is the month of Aaron and Brian both being on the show. So, hey, I was thinking about this before we jump into our guest. The numbers for the show have been up recently, so sort of means there's a bunch of new listeners. And if you're new to the show, you may not actually know both of us. So this is Brian. Aaron introduced the show, and thanks for listening for anybody who's new. If you're new, please subscribe. Please tell a friend. Please rate the show on iTunes. Feedback is always welcome. And details are always in the show notes. So thanks to everybody who's new to the show, or for anybody who's been telling a friend to come listen. So we appreciate all the uptick in listening recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. And so we'll get to our guest. So today we have Michael Liebow, Global Managing Director at Accenture Cloud. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing really well. Nice to be here, Brian, Aaron. It's I'm not in sunny Raleigh, but I am in sunny California. Well, a little foggy, I suppose, Northern California. Today's a big day. The Salesforce Tower just opened, and I'm enjoying the view from the 35th floor.
Yeah, and quick note to everyone, too, we've already talked about it a little bit. You might hear some construction noise in the background, because just because it's open doesn't mean it's finished.
Yeah, the build-out continues.
Yeah. So Michael, first off, as always, thank you for being on the show. We go back sometimes and we talk about, guests we've had on the show, people who have kind of evolved their careers. One of our longtime friends of the show is a gentleman named Rodrigo Flores. We figured out kind of serendipitously between the two, you guys have a lot of experience together. Rodrigo was at NewScale, is sort of the technology behind the Accenture Cloud Platform. But tell us about your background, because you've done quite a few significant things in government, as a CEO on VCs and boards and so forth. So give us some of your background prior to joining Accenture, and then tell us a little bit about what you're working on with the Accenture Cloud Platform.
Wow. So that's a lot. So I don't think we have hours, but just to give you a sense of it, I've been involved in some big, hairy transformations over the course of my career. Spent some time at IBM, spent a lot of time in the Valley, working with new ventures, as you said, the CEO of a venture. Also on the board of NewScale, where I met Rodrigo many years ago. I'm now spent the last 5 years at Accenture driving this evolution or shift to the cloud. Particularly, obviously in large enterprises, and so it's been a great trip, if you will. So Rodrigo and I go back. Rodrigo was one of the pioneers in service catalogs very early on with NewScale. I was on the board of this company, and we sold it around 2010 to Cisco. And after a couple of years, I ended up coming to Accenture to do this cloud gig, and which is kind of builds on a lot of experience I've had both in the startup community as well as at IBM. I mean, I'm an old x86 server guy, a solo guy, and now firmly a cloud guy. So Rodrigo's been driving platform innovation, and I've been leading the kind of global efforts around cloud management and establishing kind of the. I'd say we're a large organization, but we're three things. We're a startup within Accenture, although 5 years. Hopefully, we've matured some. We are a product organization, in a services company, and we're an operator. And so those things are very distinctive in terms of what that role is, how that role evolves. And it's been exciting. We've built a great team. We've done some amazing things. We're on the 4th version of our Accenture Cloud Platform. It just feels like everything I've done to date, has like kind of brought me here at a good time and place.
And to give you an idea real quick, as for the new listeners out there, blast from the past, to give you Rodrigo was on show 10 talking about and just so you know, this is show 350 for those that are out there.
Wow.
So 7 years ago, Rodrigo was on the show as NewScale CTO talking about service catalogs and the like. It's been a super fascinating he's been a multiple time guest on the show, and it's been really great to get his insights and kind of watch his journey over the years. So let's kind of dive right in then. Tell us a little bit about kind of bringing us up to speed on Accenture Cloud Platform then because what's really been super interesting to me in watching Rodrigo over the years is how Accenture has kind of almost changed culture slightly, or maybe I will say transitioned in the very traditional model of Accenture, if you will, into something that really bridged into cloud and this new definition of services. And tell us a little bit about how that journey happened and that thought process that had to happen.
So again, there's a lot to unpack there. Accenture has been on a very interesting journey. When I joined 5 years ago, we had 272,000 employees, which is really significant. Today, we've surpassed, I believe, 435,000 employees. So just in the past 5 years. And so the company's been on kind of a rotation to the new, with cloud, security, digital being kind of mainstays to drive that transformation. And now, I feel badly because you used to be the new, all right, but now there's the new. At least that's how our French CEO refers to it, the new, and he refers to it as machine learning, applied intelligence, blockchain. There's a lot of new things that are now coming up. And if you think about it, cloud and digital is enabling, this rapid transformation or disruption in the services business and in many industries, if not every industry. And so that transformation was interesting because 3 or 4 years ago, we made the decision that in order to sell this stuff, we had to use this stuff. And I'm happy to say that just the other week, about 2 weeks ago, we surpassed 90% of Accenture's workload is in the public cloud. And I don't know of too many 435,000 person organizations doing close to $40 billion a year in revenue are 90% in the public cloud. So we're not cloud native, but we are definitely cloud savvy. We've made that commitment. We eat our own dog food. And we had to, because of that, we learned. So, Rodrigo and I, we just rolled out the 4th version of our platform not too long ago. And, I like to joke around and say, well, we've learned 3 ways not to do it. And so we've taken every iteration, and we're starting to even think about version 5 now. But the point is that, when I first started, we had 1,000 Amazon accounts that were individuals pulling out their corporate card. And so obviously not standardized, not governed, not ensuring any level of compliance. And so we learned very quickly. I became the parent of 1,000 accounts overnight. And so, we had to pull all of that in because, if you don't own the account, you don't have the root credentials. And if you don't have the root credentials, you have risk. And so, so little, things like that become, very important in an enterprise. And so those are the things that we started to evolve to in terms of, well, how do you ensure governance? How do you ensure compliance and security? How do you ensure cost management? And so having, this transformation of the overall business, with the cloud being the critical enabler, moving workload into the cloud, largely lift and shift, and then having to manage and run in the cloud, that's our story.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And yeah, just the fact that of that size, of that number of workloads getting in the cloud is huge. And like you said, sort of eating your own dog food, drinking your own champagne, whatever the analogy is. On the flip side of that, what do Accenture clients expect from the cloud platform? Is it an expectation of, you run my workloads for me? Is it, an expectation that you're going to help them go through the same sort of kind of culture and organizational shifts, whether they call it DevOps or digital transformation? Like, what are their goals? What are their expectations in terms of working with the Accenture Cloud Platform?
So, I hate to make it about a tool, right? I mean, we're not a software company. I'm not selling licenses, to a tool. I'm selling, an outcome. And, if you look under the covers of Accenture Cloud Platform, there's dozens of components underneath. So what am I doing, right? I'm pre-integrating. I'm doing the technical evaluation. I'm pre-integrating a bunch of different components. I'm negotiating, the vendor agreements so that the commercials are very attractive. And so it's pre-integrated. All right, it's on demand. It's a SaaS multi-tenant application. It's interesting. It's multi-cloud. Our discovery engine and our catalog, runs in Amazon. Our migration engine runs in Azure. Our billing engine runs in Google. So we are truly, multi-tenant, multi-cloud. And so we're experiencing all these things firsthand. So you're learning, from all of our bumps, bruises. We've had to trade out certain components. So bottom line is, from a foundation or tooling perspective, I am de-risking your journey, right? And I'm making it commercially more viable. And if you adopt the platform, because we do this, right? We make it, it's Accenture. This is how Accenture manages our cloud services. But we could put your logo on it. We can integrate to your Active Directory, and we can set up your RBAC, and it becomes your cloud platform. And we can do it in less than 4 weeks. And it's since it's on demand, it's pay as you go. All right, it's kind of very cheap, setup, very fast, and boom, you're in business. So for organizations that have maybe 10% in the cloud, single provider, this is kind of the on-ramp towards multi-cloud. And as I said, a cloud requires active management. It requires that what people are doing. So we learned very early on that single pane of glass was foolish. And so we don't try to be that. We coexist. We built a coexistence engine. What does that mean? It means that we discover what people are doing. We advocate in a DevOps model that your developers go native. The richness and the fidelity of the experience is best in the provider console. But if you're trying to administrate or create a control plane above those cloud services, you want to allow the developers to have certain freedom, but you want the organization to have a certain amount of control. So those are the things that we built into the platform. And in fact, we've gone serverless, because the only way you can run at kind of web scale is with kind of a high performance discovery engine that, and we use Lambda. We're basically auditing our estate every 10 minutes to ensure a level of compliance across that estate. So if somebody configures something, it could have been secure from start, but they might have changed something, all right, that now exposes them. We'll know about it. And so, we can alert on those things. We can actively, reconfigure. We can, because we have the root credentials, we can take control and remediate so that the exposure is limited.
So Michael,
all the things that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask a kind of a quick follow-up to that, because this is really fascinating to me. So there is the concept of how long does it take to be, I'll use the term functional. But then there is also the concept of what is if you take that and you say, okay, what is the realistic timelines you became functional, but whether it's a technology change or a cultural change, at what point does it start to make a material impact on the business? And I know that answer is probably it depends, but I was just wondering what your insights are on functional versus impact.
So, everybody starts cloud with the notion of around a business case. It's not just because your neighbor's doing it, right? I mean, so in your peer group, there's definitely a leader who's an early adopter, and so whether or not you've chosen to be an early adopter or a fast follower, hopefully not a laggard, right? You're looking, so there's one kind of poster child in every industry, that's kind of out in the forefront, and so understanding, what it takes to drive, the functional requirements around, managing or running in the cloud. A lot of people don't really have the full view of what that means. And so, kind of looking for a partner that can help enlighten your organization, I think is important. And as I said, even like billing. My Amazon bill each month just surpassed 300 million lines. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Every transaction, every account, I have to, in the old days, not too long ago, right? You barely did show back. I have to do chargeback, and so I have to, flip an invoice quickly, right? Well, think about it, a 300 million line bill. So it used to take me literally 3 weeks to crank the bill out to thousands of projects. I now have it down to 3 hours. And so, that's with the bill growing exponentially. And, you got to make sure it's accurate. We audit, right? So we have Bill Watch to make sure you're getting charged correctly. We have a lot of capabilities that we built in. Most organizations wouldn't have a clue what I'm talking about. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Aaron. I mean, it's there's some.
I'm a little shocked right now.
There's some crazy stuff under the covers here. It's like you said, you're running, major portions of what you do across multiple cloud platforms. So there's that level of expertise and integration needed. You've got, like you said, you've got an entire kind of operational function that is running all on serverless because you're having to do, frequency of checking things and updates and so forth. And then, like you said, just managing this new world where the amount of data is fantastic, but, when that amount of data is literally hundreds of millions of lines of billing that you have to then turn into revenue for yourself, that's a lot of stuff going on. It's, you start getting into some very, very interesting scale problems, which I would assume that as soon as you start talking about those numbers to your clients, they go, you guys take care of that complexity. I don't want to deal with that. I want to build cars. I want to find the next life-saving drug. You deal with that back-end stuff.
Yes. So we're challenged by the bimodal nature of, IT today, that people think that, the cloud is just another data center, but it isn't. And so, the kind of changing, I think you mentioned before, the transformation aspects of the culture. There's infrastructure groups that are losing control, losing power in an organization. We're at the point where applications and infrastructure are converging, but the organizations haven't. And so the whole notion of DevOps, right, is that developers operate. They push a button, right, and they push code into production. They don't order a server. And so those notions, and those workflows, don't necessarily apply in a new world. So, that's the notion of bimodal. The things that apply in the cloud don't apply in legacy, and not only don't they apply, the commercial models for a lot of the old tools don't apply. So even if the technology does, if the device comes and goes, why would you pay an entire month's fee for that device? So we have people that do spot buying, right? They scale up, they buy 10,000 instances for, a couple hours. You have to pay to monitor those devices, even though they were here and gone. Do they even go into a CMDB, which is notoriously lacking? But, what are the policies around, this change, and how does IT ops, conform to this new paradigm? That's huge. So what I think of the three hurdles that most organizations have in terms of cloud adoption, one's technical, how do I use this stuff, right? Two is commercial, what do I need to do in order to protect my organization or whatnot? And, that's a whole nother Cloudcast. And then three is cultural, right? And people boil culture down into, what's in it for me? So it's a very unique time in our industry.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And like you said, this is we're getting into some stuff that are going to have to be follow-up Cloudcasts as well. So hopefully we'll put some things on your calendar ahead of time. We'll have you back on for sure. As you deal with large corporations, so I know, when I talk to large companies, there's always sort of, like you said, there's a little bit of bimodalness to stuff. You can always find a group that's willing to go fast and try new things and break rules. And then, a lot of times they'll run into barriers of scaling that culture change. Have you found any trends over the last 5 years, or patterns or things where you have some sense of, how long it takes for the culture to spread from those early groups they're doing things differently to broader parts of the organization, or maybe even just, kind of tips and tricks to help it spread within the company?
Well, a lot of this, so there could be pockets, as you just mentioned, pockets of innovation that are striving and thriving and driving change. The issue you get into is, do they have leadership support? Do they have leadership air cover? I'll be honest with you. I've been here 5 years at a fairly senior position, and I'm fortunate that I have a sponsor who, without him, we could never have done this. So the investment model, we've spent, a good chunk of investment. We've brought in a whole bunch of talent. And so these are things that are kind of conditional to be able to drive for change. And we've been held somewhat separate because there's this notion that the old can't birth the new. And that's very true. So you can't expect people who kind of, do the same thing day in, day out to start doing something different. That level of change doesn't necessarily happen. And so you do have to create, some level of separation in order to strive and drive. So the reason we're 90% in the public cloud is that we had a leader come in, a CIO, who was like, I have to do this. And so he staffed for it. He created, a group, and, they worked through the migration, and he calls himself a data center killer, right? And so he, knocked down his first data center, he, moved DR to the cloud. He just kind of had a strategy, and, kind of like just day by day, progressed and, put the metrics, the KPIs in place in order to, kind of drive, put, kind of mile markers around the change. And so they've been measuring this percent workload for years now, and kind of report out on it, every so often, and so high-fiving that they're now better than 90%. So those are all things that are kind of required, if you're going to achieve some measure of cloud transformation. The last point I guess I would make around that cloud journey is that it is a journey, and you have to be prepared for it. So having a sponsor, having KPIs, having a kind of a centralized group or center of excellence, if you will. I mean, those are all kind of things that kind of drive the transformation. But one of the things we did was we did a survey of large companies, and what we found was interesting. And this is a year or two ago. That every company has a cloud strategy. All right, it's almost like duh. Right, your board expects one. But say it this way: how many cloud strategies are tied to business outcomes? And the number's small. And so, what I would suggest or offer is that if you don't have a cloud strategy tied to a business outcome, you don't have cloud. And that, I think, that's fundamental.
Yeah, that's a very strong point. Absolutely. So Michael, thank you very much for that. I think what we're going to do is actually we're going to kind of stop there. That was a fantastic way to kind of wrap this all up. So Michael, for those out there that are listening, where can folks either find out more about you, about Accenture Cloud Platform, things either you or the company have going on in the industry coming up?
So we actually have a very active blog on Accenture.com, cloud blog. And it's not just, a bunch of talking heads. You'll see, blogs there from across the strata. And so there's a lot of content, and we very, freely share as much information as we can around that. So, I encourage people, to reach out. We at this point, after 5 years, there's a lot of cloud experts. And they're obviously in demand. But for most organizations, we are thrilled to engage, have a cloud discussion, and help to kind of boost or put some pep in that cloud transformation. We do believe that for the business outcome, the faster you move, the better. And we've gotten people literally out of data centers in weeks. We've transformed entire organizations from 0% in the cloud to 100% in a year. So it's possible. And I think the art of the cloud, people need to understand that you can do this. You don't have to drag it out for 7 years. You can, right? I wouldn't advocate for that. But the faster you rip the Band-Aid, the better you're going to feel.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, listen, Michael, we've had some very long pauses in this as we've been kind of in awe of some of the stuff you're doing. So thank you so much for the time today. Really appreciate the insight, especially the insight of just kind of how far along you've come, how you've, fostered this culture within Accenture, how you're transferring that out to the market. So thank you so much for the conversation today. Folks, with that, we're going to wrap it up. For Michael and for Aaron, thank you so much for listening this week, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more podcasts, show notes, and everything social media. And visit acloud.guru for all your cloud training needs.